Hello and welcome back, all 611 of you fellow poker junkies. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here. We've got a good session. It's been a while since I put one out, so let's get started. Before we do, one quick announcement. J9, your name has been drawn, so as a Patreon supporter, I appreciate you, and I'm going to send you 10% of whatever we win this session. Let's go!
I managed to get a seat in this game pretty quickly, and my first playable hand was a pair of 8s in the hijack. Under the gun raised to $13, and I made the call. The flop was pretty good for pocket 8s since it misses a typical under the gun opening range. 9, 4, deuce, rainbow. He bets $25, and I'm going to call here. The turn is the 10 of hearts, and he checks. I'm going to try to keep the pot small. I don't think that he has a hand here, and for that reason, I could see making a bet to take things down. He might make a hand if I let him stick around, but he also might fire one more time with those overcards if he misses. The river's a 7, and he does fire a $30 bet. I call expecting to see bricked overcards fairly often, and he does in fact show ace-queen. This is a close spot, and I think that you could argue to actually make the bet and try to protect your hand on the turn. That said, you are potentially paying off something like ace-9 that had a hand and the overcard comes and they just decide to pot control. A little bit close. I think I like the bet more than the check, but at the time I did make the check. For the next hand that matters, we get a pair of hooks under the gun +1. I raise to $15 pre, and only the button, who happens to be the same opponent, calls. The flop is King 7-8 rainbow, and I check, planning to call most bets. I think that you can lead here also, because this does favor our range, but I prefer the check strategy out of position overall. Our opponent bets $20, and I make the call. The turn is another king. Now I'm definitely checking again. When I do, he's going to bet, but he chooses to go really small by betting $20 again. Usually, when an opponent bets this small on a board like this, they are often playing a hand that has medium value and don't want to go any bigger. I'm giving him a lot of hands like 8s or something like pocket 9s, and for that reason, I spend some time debating the raise. Ultimately, at the time, I decided to just call and plan to call any reasonable sized bet on the river. The river is a 7 and the action goes check-check, and he mucks when I show jacks. I have a feeling that I could have raised small for value on the turn and been paid by worse. But oh well.
I hope I make your YouTube channel.
This hand is played against Rich. You may remember Rich from episode number 12 when he turned a card face up in a bold bluff attempt. I managed to win that exchange, but now it is time to do battle again. I have the ace of diamonds, jack of hearts on the button. Rich is in the cutoff with $220 in his stack and opens to $20. The table has been rather call happy, and ace-jack does not play well multi-way. For that reason, I make a small 3-bet to thin the field, making it $55 in position. This works and only Rich calls. We're heads up to a juicy flop. Ace of clubs, jack of diamonds, 10 of diamonds for a flop top 2. Now we just need to figure out how to get the chips in the middle. He checks, and I bet really small, $35. This bet is designed to let us jam the turn with a really tantalizing SPR for our opponent. If he has a flush draw, the bet size could induce a jam, which would be fantastic, but we do have the ace of diamonds. It's difficult for him to have much of a hand in this spot, so I chose the small sizing. He calls, and the turn shows up a king of spades. Rich now jams. Gross. I hate the spot I'm in. I don't have to be good here that often, but with a 4-liner to the straight on board, this doesn't look very appealing. I think he's going to have the queen really often after the action goes 3-bet, call, check call, jam. I slowly and reluctantly let my 2-pair go. Rich later told me that he did in fact have ace-queen, and I believe that he's an honest guy. Nice hand, sir. The score update. Sean 1, Rich 1. We're down a couple hundred after that hand, and most of the table covers us now. Before I get into this hand too much, I need to share something with you. I have a problem when sports are on.
Oh, hey, I've been meaning to talk to you about something.
Yeah, what's up?
Well, lately...
And he pulls that one into right field. That's going to be a hit, and it's going to put the Mariners ahead.
Do you agree?
Yes.
That lack of attention is relevant to this hand, because while I don't want to speak badly about anyone, I have an opponent to my left who is very drunk and talking constantly to me even when I'm in the middle of a hand. I'm not focusing well, and much like when I'm watching sports and Heidi's talking to me, the details are foggy even though I think I'm paying attention. As a side note, I have since learned to pause the game when my wife wants to talk, because I know I have a terrible attention span when sports are on. Alright, the hand. This one is a straddled pot with a limp. Action gets to me in the cutoff, and I have ace-queen. I raise to $25 and get one caller to my right. The flop looks great with an unconnected ace-10-6. Checks to us, we're going to bet $20. The hijack makes the call. The turn is the queen of diamonds, adding a flush and giving me 2 pair. Hijack now bets $50. He may have been drawing for the flush. I'm just going to call. I probably should have raised here, but with the drunken barrage from my left, I became convinced that I had the ace of hearts in my hand. The turn is the 7 of diamonds. He checks and I check back my nut flush thinking I have only 2 pair. We're good with 2 pair, but let's see what the solver says when I put this hand in. You may remember that something similar happened to me in Vegas when I was on tilt. This is costly and stupid, and I know that it can't keep happening. So I reached out to my buddy Brian, who used to be a tournament grinder, and asked him what his approach was to not give away info by checking his cards post-flop. He said that he made a habit of always rechecking on the flop. This way, even if you're exhausted, on tilt, distracted, if anything is going wrong in your game, you can still double check your cards and you're not giving info away. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you, man. Let's move on. I can't possibly mess up a hand like this, could I? We get pocket kings against the very same drunk opponent that I mentioned from the last hand. We're in the hijack with $500 and raise to $20 over a straddle. The button raises to $40, which in the state of Washington caps the action after 3 raises, so I can only call. That's what I do, and we go to Jack 6 Deuce Rainbow and check to her, hoping that her impaired judgment will choose to pile in the chips. She does not choose this option and instead checks back. The turn is an 8, and I bet $100 over betting the pot. Come on, unusual lines causing mistakes. She does call. The river is a 4, and I pile for the same reason. She thinks for a moment, and then folds. Still able to pick up some chips. Pretty happy with it. I'm so embarrassed about the way that I played this hand that I'm only going to show my chips going to my opponent after I made a big move with a combo draw multi-way in a bad spot and missed. Sometimes the train is not just derailed, you're so far away from the tracks that you're rumbling through a field before you realize how bad things are and send your train careening down a mountainside into a tragic abyss. Alright, it's time to set mine. We have pocket 6s, and I said prior to this hand that I was going to straddle. I forget, and then throw in a raise to $6 when I notice my mistake. We go 6 ways to a drop-dead gorgeous flop. Queen of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, 4 of spades. I check, under the gun bets $20, everyone calls, and when it gets back to me, I can already tell how this night is going to end. I raise to $150. A short stack calls. The turn is an offsuit 9, and the river, the 3 of diamonds. That one might not be so good. The opponent flips up, exactly what we don't want to see. 5, 8 of diamonds, and scoops the pot. Look what the dealer gave us. That's a good looking ace king of diamonds. Let's raise it up to $20 over the straddle. Straddle raises to $63, and again, Washington politicians have made it illegal for me to raise again. Such a sweet rule. I feel so protected. The flop is Queen 10-6 Rainbow with a diamond. We have 2 overcards, a gut shot, and a backdoor flush draw. He bets $150 that's remaining in his stack all in, and I'm going to call since we have so many good turn cards. We end up breaking out, but the good news is that we knew exactly what he had. Pause the video and comment below with what you think he had. You all got it right. Queen 8. We're now well below a starting stack and stuck about $700. Let's get out of it with a pair of 9s. We make it $20 over a straddle under the gun and the button calls. Then the straddle makes it $120 on a short jam. I make the call since I can't rejam to isolate the player. We go 3 ways to 8-6 ace rainbow, and it checks through. The turn is a glorious 9, and we are once again feeling great about our relationship with chips. I jam to try to get my opponent's last chips in the middle. He tanks and then decides on a call. The river is a 7 of spades. Let's hope we don't get shown spades. He He doesn't turn it up right away. I show the set, and he turns over Jack 10 of clubs for a straight. Well, this night is going splendidly. We're getting into the early hours of the AM and pick up Ace 5 of hearts in the big blind. It can't keep going my opponent's way, right? I call a $15 raise from the cutoff. Middle position, who limped, completes, and we go to the flop 3 ways to see Queen of Hearts, 3 of Hearts, 10 of Diamonds. It checks to the cutoff, who bets $20. I call, and middle position calls. The turn is the 9 of Hearts. I check. Middle position now leads for $70. The cutoff folds, and I make it $170. He calls. The river's the 9 of spades. I jam, and he thinks for a long time. He mentions that he thinks I have the flush, and then throws his hand into the muck. Felt so good to hit the nut flush. Let's try to do that again. This time we're looking for the spade variety instead of hearts with the ace 9. I make it $20 over the straddle and get 2 callers, the small blind and the straddle. They both check on the flop of 8 of spades, 4 of spades, deuce of hearts. I check since my under the gun opponent almost never folds. The turn is the 4 of clubs. The small blind leads for $20. It turns out that this board is dry enough that under the gun does actually locate a hand in his range that he's willing to fold. I'm going to guess that it had to have been something like 10-3 offsuit. Anyway, I make the call and we see the jack of spades on the river. Cha-ching! Even better than that, the small blind leads into us for $55. I'm going to raise this up. Let's make it $200. And he throws in the call. We've won 2 hands in a row, and we were grinding our way back towards even. 3:45 a.m. I'm exhausted, but keep fighting to get back to even. We pick up ace queen in middle position and raise to $15. The hijack is short stacked and jams his last $95. The stake cap rule is once again in effect, and the table has not been folding. So we end up going to a flop 4 ways with 1 player all in. We end up with a flop top 2 pair on ace queen 9 rainbow. Oh yes, this will be a great way to send off from the table and book a small win. I bet $100 into the side pot and get a caller. The turn is a 10, and I jam the remainder of my stack, which also gets called. The river's a banana, and then our first all-in opponent says,
I win the main pot.
And turns over king jack for the straight. Man, bummer. But at least we're scooping some profit out of this pot with top 2. At this point, it's so late into the night and I'm exhausted. I rack up a mountain of chips from trying to buy myself even multiple times and then fighting back from a $900 deficit to book a smaller loss of $194.
Well, it was an interesting session with some ups and downs. A lot of fun. I don't normally stay awake till 4 a.m. That part of it wasn't the best, but ultimately a good table and a good time. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did and you want to watch another one, boom, I got one for you right there. Give that a click and enjoy that video. Until next time, go crush a table, and I will talk to you then.